Hi, welcome to HowtoDandD. My name is Fred Wheeler and today I want to talk about Dungeons & Dragons. And we're talking about Dungeons & Dragons 5e, and that is the Lost Mine of Phandelver. And as we continue doing our Dungeon Master Guide, for those of you who are players, this is not a good time to be hanging around while I discuss any of the topics that are being discussed today. Because Klarg, the bugbear, or should we call Klarg the Warlord of Phandelver, is a key character within the adventure, which you are probably going to come across very shortly. So please, if you are a player, it is time to leave. If you're a dungeon master, you should stay because we're going to have a discussion. What I really like about Klarg is there's actually heaps and heaps of information in the Lost Mine of Phandelver adventure. There's a whole bunch of information on Klarg, way more than you would get on Gundren Rockseeker. And I was quite surprised. As I was doing my preparation for this, I started to notice that actually I didn't have to create very much. I didn't have to read between the lines too much. It's all really there. So I'm really regurgitating what's already in the player's, and not in the player's handbook, in the Lost Mine of Phandelver adventure book. I have added a few other sort of twists to it, and hopefully you'll get an opportunity to discuss them with me. Okay, so let's talk about Klarg. So Klarg is the leader of the Cragmaw goblin bandits, or tribe. I think goblins tend to talk about themselves as being a tribe. And Klarg is probably the very first major villain that the players will interact with. Now, Klarg, being the leader, he basically lords it over the goblins that are living in Cragmaw hideout in that lair, which is just a little bit off to the side of the main road. And he resides at location 8, along with 2 other goblins and his wolf called Ripper. And we'll discuss both of those very, very shortly. So it's quite a sort of expansive location, given that you've got such a small adventure, and yet there is like a back door to getting to Klarg if you really wanted to. And we're going to go through that process. You can see on the map that entering the cave, area 3, you could go through area 3 to area 8 and go straight to Klarg. Now, the players won't know this, and it's, to be fair, I think a risky maneuver for them to do anyway. But he is a major player. He's the very first major player the players will actually interact with. He is probably one of the key characters that is responsible for the success of the Cragmaw tribe goblins. Now, the Cragmaw tribe goblins are made up of your standard goblins, but also hobgoblins, and obviously there are some bugbears amongst that. And he is one of the bugbears who's risen through the ranks, and we're going to discuss him quite a lot. He's been ordered, he's been given instructions from, he's not the only boss within the Cragmaw tribe. There are other bosses as it happens. And he's been given instructions from his boss to harry or harass any kind of traffic, plunder it, stop it, basically mess with it, anything travelling along the Tribor Trail from Neverwinter to Phandelver. So the main road, take out anything that's travelling that route. So any routes leading to Phandelver are being plundered and harassed by Klarg's goblins. And there's a reason. What you do is you cut off a location when you want to take control of it. And Klarg is part of that goal to make sure that they can cut off Phandelver from the rest of the Sword Coast. If you do something like that, it makes it very, very difficult to be able to do anything other than shut that location down. And this is because Klarg is following orders from King Groll. Now, Groll is the chief of the Cragmaw tribe. He is the top dog. There are many leaders within the Cragmaw tribe, but Groll is the right at the top. He is the king, chief of the Cragmaw tribe, and he lives at Cragmaw Castle. And he gives instructions to Klarg to make sure he does what needs to be done. It's a twisted sort of link, because there are many links that go all the way back to Nesna the Black Spider. So you have Klarg going back to King Groll, and then King Groll goes back to the Black Spider or Nesna. He's been targeting poorly defended locations. Anything that is poorly defended in terms of a caravan, those are the targets that he's been told to take out, to either capture, kill its occupants, anything like that. That's what Klarg's job is to do. So he targets the poorly defended caravans and any wealthy travellers, usually wealthy travellers, but not always, that are not well defended or can be stopped or circumvented in some way. And by shutting down trade to Phandalin, it really means that Nesna's plans are going to work much better, which is why Klarg is doing this. Klarg doesn't know all the details, he's just been given instructions to make sure this happens. What happened a few days ago, if we start off our adventure from the very beginning, is that Klarg was given some new messages or new instructions. So just a few days ago, he's been given instructions that the Cragmaw tribe are going to be given instructions to stop a particular individual, and this is Gundren Rockseeker. So the instructions or message came from Cragmaw Castle, and it is to waylay Gundren Rockseeker and anybody travelling with Gundren. All he knows is that by doing so, this is going to result in his tribe getting paid well, which is fine for goblins. Goblins are all about that sort of thing. You can pay them and they will do jobs. That's always the case. Klarg is the boss of about just under less than 20 goblins. So it's not a huge force that he looks after at Cragmaw Hideout, but it's big enough to do the job. As I said, he knows that there's an individual by the name of the Black Spider who is paying the Cragmaw tribe to deliver Gundren to Nesna. Now, he doesn't know that his name is Nesna. He only knows that his name is the Black Spider. So if you get into a conversation with your players between Klarg and what he knows, it's all really spelled out. There's like a nice little highlighted box in the adventure that sort of talks to you about what the goblins within Cragmaw Hideout actually know. And obviously Klarg would be one of the individuals within there that should know pretty much all of that information. So all he knows is that they have to deliver Gundren, and as it happens, all of his possessions and a map to Cragmaw Castle. And the Black Spider will pay them handsomely, which is always nice. They've also been instructed that anybody that is travelling with Gundren is to be held, but Gundren's human companion is being held currently in Cragmaw Hideout in the eating cave for a nice goblin meal later on. So Sildar is in bad shape. He's not looking too healthy, and at some point Klarg is certainly going to be snacking on him. One of the things I found interesting is with Sildar Hallwinter within this location, it makes it a lot more difficult for the players to be successful and get things done the way they want to, because there's a chance that Sildar can be killed before they actually save him. And they will obviously jump to the conclusion that if Sildar Hallwinter is there, then Gundren should be held in that location as well. But they won't find out till later on that that's not the case. It's entirely possible that they could explore Klarg's location, where he's the leader, and never find out exactly where Gundren is if they just wipe out all the goblins. If all they do is wipe out all the goblins and never do any kind of investigation or interrogation, they're never going to find out that information. And so as a dungeon master, you might find yourself in a situation where you have to drop a hint or a clue to get them back on track so they can actually find Gundren at a later date. Whether you use a letter, which is probably not very likely with goblins, but there's always a way of making that happen. Whether you drop that kernel, that seed, in Phandelver itself through an NPC, there's always a way to make it happen. But it is entirely possible that they might not get any of that information about where Gundren is, because Sildar Hallwinter doesn't know where Gundren was taken. All he knows is that Gundren was taken away. Klarg is feared, and for good reason. He's feared and very, very unpopular amongst the goblins of his tribe. It's not uncommon for a bugbear to become really unpopular amongst their tribe because of the way they operate. They're not very nice to the goblins below them. They're bullies. They generally consider themselves stronger and more impressive and more important. And that's exactly what's happening with Klarg. And as I said, most bugbears will do this sort of thing, but Klarg is another level up. In fact, he's made himself so unpopular, he's actually got some enemies within his own tribe or the collection of goblins that he looks after. And one of those is the goblin leader. Now, he's just a standard goblin, not a bugbear, and his name is Yimmick. Now, Yimmick is looking after, I believe it's Area 6 of the Cragmaw hideout, and he wants to replace Klarg if possible. He wants to wipe him out, get rid of him completely, because essentially he's just been making life miserable for Yimmick and all of the goblins that he has any kind of power over. And he knows that if he doesn't get rid of Klarg at some point, it's going to cause a lot of problems. There's entirely possible, they're on the edge of a mutiny, of there being an insurrection of some kind. So this is something that players can capitalize on when it comes to dealing with Klarg. Klarg has himself a mangy pet wolf called Ripper. Ripper is essentially got the same stat block or statistics as any normal wolf. The only difference is that Ripper is completely loyal to Klarg, and therefore he will stay at his side as long as Klarg is standing. He'll also follow instructions that Klarg gives. So there's obviously been some sort of training taking place between the wolf and the bugbear. One of the things I find interesting about all of this information is that because of this situation, Klarg has now had to set up sort of like a set of bodyguards, not just the wolf. Ripper isn't just part of the equation. He actually has 2 goblin guards that he trusts that are treated much better than the rest of the goblins, and they share Klarg's personal sleeping cave. So while he's sleeping, they're on duty, and when he's not sleeping, they can go to sleep. And obviously, Ripper the wolf will watch over them, and obviously Ripper is usually awake when Klarg is awake. One of the problems with this particular bugbear is he's developed delusions of grandeur. He considers himself a mighty warlord, beginning his career should I say, as a world conquesting bugbear. He is a warlord in just the beginning of his career, and he's literally seeing himself as becoming like a tyrant of some kind, somebody who will have more than sufficient power. The Cragmaw tribe is just the beginning. This is just the starting off point for Klarg as far as he's concerned. So those are things and aspects to his personality that you can play up when you're running Klarg. You can also allow the players to exploit those areas of his personality, because why would you not? It would certainly make a lot of fun scenes and role plays given the opportunity. He's not completely sane. Klarg is not sane. He's quite mad. He actually refers to himself in the third person, and there are a couple of phrases within the adventure that talk about Klarg and what you can sort of say to the player's characters as you're running the adventure if you wanted to. So things like, who dares defy Klarg? Now, how you use your voice for this character is completely up to you. I'm not going to do that right now, okay? Klarg will build a throne from your bones and puny ones. So I would say that Klarg, if you were to try to roleplay Klarg, could easily be played a little bit like a rough and tumble Yoda from Star Wars who's been drinking heavily all night and been singing in a karaoke bar. What does that sound like? I have no idea, but I thought it was a good description for how you could play out Klarg. So yes, I would get rid of a lot of the linking words with Klarg, try to sort of just go with the consonants, and the only character I could think of that sort of made sense was Yoda, who'd been drinking a lot and gone to a karaoke bar and pretty much just about on the verge of losing his voice. So it gets a bit rougher. Okay, so those are the basics within the adventure that I found were easily spelled out. But you can see details on Klarg by checking out page 12 of The Lost Mine of Phandelver. He's well covered. He's got more details here than a lot of the NPCs within the adventure, which is kind of strange, but I think it's good too. Goblins under Klarg's command resent his bullying, and really they see Klarg, really they want to see him dead. They want to see him completely wiped out in some way. And if the players present a situation where that might take place, then Klarg's going to be mincemeat. But if they don't work towards that sort of outcome, they're going to have to be very, very quiet and careful about how they approach Klarg. Bugbears are renowned for the way they operate in terms of stealth and ambushes. They're very good at that sort of thing. Klarg also desires to displace King Groll. That's the chief of the Cragmaw tribe. He would definitely love to actually eliminate the king completely and take his place. As I said, delusions of grandeur, he really sees himself as being a top dog. Now with regard to his stat block, you're just going to be using the standard bugbear stat block. So armor class is already included there, 16, hit points 27. It's not a lot of hit points, so you've really got to do the work with Klarg in the first round, potentially second or third round he might live that long. It really depends on how many players you have in your group and how well they roll and how well they approach the situation. His key features are brute and surprise attack. So make sure you have your goblins running around the cave informing other goblins and Klarg of what's taking place as they work their way through the cavern location. Because if you don't, really you're not going to get a chance to use Klarg. I've seen Klarg decimate a party. I've seen Klarg obliterate groups of characters easily. I've seen the players' characters take out Klarg with ease. It can go both ways depending on how you communicate with the other goblins who are being attacked or dealing with problems within the cave itself. And there are plenty of opportunities to inform Klarg of interlopers, individuals who are trying to make their way through that location. Now Klarg is pretty much a coward. So without Ripper the Wolf and his goblin bodyguards, he's more likely to run in combat rather than fight to the death. He's certainly much more likely to essentially surrender. Now I know this sounds strange, but if he can keep himself alive, he will certainly try to do that. And I would play to that as much as you possibly can. Now with regard to Phandalin, Klarg loves battle, mayhem and treasure. So plundering all of the wealth and resources that are traveling to Phandalin, he's right up for that. And because he excels at ambush and stealth tactics, he's essentially going to set up some sort of ambush on either side. He knows there's a chimney behind him. One of the things the adventure does state is he doesn't believe that anybody would come through that location. So when he sets up an ambush, it's going to be from the main entry point. But if the intelligence he's getting says that they are making their way through location 3, where the wolves are that are supposed to be guarding the back entrance, then certainly have him set up a surprise attack in that location as well, so that he covers both locations. If he's trying to escape, the most likely location for him to try to escape through is down the chimney. which presents a whole lot of problems in itself, because climbing quickly isn't really easy to do in Dungeons & Dragons 5e, but falling is. Certainly falling down the hole would be very, very simple to do. Try to role-play Klarg as being flexible, so his ambition serves a couple of different purposes. In terms of his loyalty to anybody, ambition and survival. Those are really the only factors that play into Klarg. So when you're talking, trying to get the players to talk with Klarg about anything whatsoever, my suggestion to you is work on the principle of 3 or 4 concepts. And they are, they can talk to Klarg if, 1, the party has been captured. There's no reason for Klarg to kill them. Certainly capturing them would be an option. And if Klarg gets captured, so if they drop Klarg down, don't kill him, and they keep him as a prisoner, they could certainly have a conversation with him. Also, if Klarg can't escape and he's losing the fight and he decides to surrender, there's an opportunity to actually engage in some sort of conversation between the players' characters and Klarg. And that's pretty much what I think covers Klarg in terms of this character. There are a whole lot of other aspects to Klarg, but I've covered about 2.5 pages worth of material. We will certainly have a discussion about it in detail after this. So if you liked this content, please share and like the video. Consider subscribing if you haven't subscribed to my channel. Hit the bell button to be notified when I go live and when I publish new videos. If you want to support my channel, you supported my channel by watching this video, and thank you very much. I do appreciate it. Now you can also continue to support me by watching more of my videos. The more videos you watch, the better off I do. I don't do Patreon, but down in the description you'll find affiliate links to the book depository and Amazon, where you can buy stuff online. I get a small commission, you pay exactly the same price, just go through the link, buy what you want. You don't have to buy the thing I've linked to. And look, this is your opportunity. Say hi to me, ask questions, give feedback, share your experiences about how Klarg operated or worked in your adventure, or what you plan to do with Klarg. All of those, and you can disagree with me. Maybe there's something else that you think that I have missed, or that I should have added, or could have suggested differently. That can all go into the live chat right now. So start typing, use those fingers. Otherwise, if you're not part of the live chat, that's what the comments section's all about. Jump down in the comments and type in anything that you like, and we'll go from there. Obviously, I will only respond to comments that are constructive, just because that makes much more sense to me. And hey, till next time, keep rolling those 20s.